Добрый день. Я хочу представить моего коллегу, заместителя ректора Амстердамской архитектурной академии, Барт Балтер. Он сегодня расскажет про нашу академию. Спасибо.
Okay, thank you very much of having me here. I'll try to talk English as slow as possible, so Darья won't have to translate. But afterwards you will have, of course, time to ask questions if some things are not clear. Very happy to be here to tell something about our beautiful academy in Amsterdam. We have a totally different educational system, as I understood, than what you have here. So I also wonder what you think about it at the end. To start off, the academy is a school which is established in 1908. There was a society which was called Architecturное, which was a society where architects came together to inspire each other and also learn from each other and see what was happening in society and how architects could develop ideas to improve society. This was already established in the mid-19th century, and it also had its own architectural school. But this school was transformed and also was shifted to the Technical University in Delft, maybe the most well-known architecture school in the Netherlands. So Amsterdam was without any architectural education. And then three of the leading architects from that time, Berlage, Kromhout and Kuipers, they said it's very important as Amsterdam to have our own architectural system, our own school. So what they did is, because they from their offices they found out that there was not enough good talent to work at the office. So they said, we're going to make our own educational system based on what was happening in Delft, but then added something extra, which was work itself. So students were not only studying at school, but they were also working at the offices of the architects in Amsterdam. On one hand learning, on the other hand working. So theory and practice next to each other. And in the mid-50s and 60s, there was also a very big group of very influential architects who taught at the academy and also brought it to where it is right now. Like, for instance, Aldo van Eyck, very famous of his orphanage in Amsterdam, and Herman Hertzberger, famous for his structuralism. They came together and they raised the magazine Forum, which is still existing, and actually we're writing a new issue right now. It's always about the current situation in architecture, but also what should it be in 10 years or 25 years. Where should we go to as architects? What can we develop, and what can be our role in this? So from 1908, the academy started. We had our own architecture program, urbanism since 1957, landscape architecture since 72. We had a master course since 2013, and in 2015, then we had the credits for the science master, because the title of architect or landscape architect or urbanist is a protected title in Europe, to make sure that every time something is built or designed, there's always a licensed architect at the project. Nowadays, our school is part of the Amsterdam Academy of the Arts, so the University of the Arts, which consists of multiple faculties, like the Brighton Academy, which the Academy of Applied Arts, the Academy of Architecture, Conservatory, the Film Academy, the Rijnword Academy, which is about interior design mostly, and the Academy of Theatre and Dance. And it's not only a name, we also try to work together as much as possible with these other faculties, because we think architecture is more than just building buildings. It's also about looking at society and trying to find all these kind of parts of art and applying them to the field of architecture, urbanism and landscape architecture. Then our building. Of course, many of you probably know Amsterdam. The Academy building is located exactly in the city center at the Waterloo Square, which is a very important square in Amsterdam. A lot of things are happening, were happening and still are happening over there. And we're in an old building, which is this old building. It was an old Zittenhuis. And the Zittenhuis, it was meant for the poor people where they could get food and coal for their stoves to get warm. So it was the rich people who were in the front here, and they were just handing out food for the poor. So it was always a very important building in society. Next to that you have the Arsenal, which was a storage housing, and which is also a part of the Academy right now. This was the building in the 50s when the Academy went there. So the Academy building, we entered it in 46, just after the Second World War. And then this was only the Academy building, and in I think it was in 2013 we started also with this part here, which we added to the Academy building. And like I said, it's always been a very important part of Amsterdam. So riots were happening, beautiful things were happening, bad things were happening. And I show you this because we also think that it's very important for an architect to stand exactly in the middle of society, to learn from society and not just look from a distance. This is the Academy building at the left, of course, and then the riots were going on just in front of it. Some pictures from the inside. A very old building, very luxurious building, very rich building. And unfortunately, well, according to me, we had to change a few things about the building because of fire safety and all those kind of things. So it looks like this right now, with very carefully done the old part and the new part combined. So it works much better than before, but still I like the old building better myself. But probably the most important part of the Academy is the inner court. This was the inner court where it was used by the rich, with a very rich classical garden. The rich people could just sit in the middle, and then around here the poor people could get in and they could get their food and their coal inside. There was a big hierarchy inside. This inner courtyard now is the actual heart of the Academy. A lot of discussion is going on, so we use it for big workshops. This is, for instance, a first-year workshop just to see how can you make space with, in this case, it was bamboo. How do you make space? What is space? So thinking about all those trivial questions. But also as a laboratory. This is, for instance, landscape architecture, architects looking for the right plans to grow at certain parts of riverbanks. You use it for exhibitions, for the students themselves mostly, but also for people from the outside. And most importantly, it is a social gathering place where there's a lot of discussion going on about our profession. And it's not only architects talking to architects, but also we want to try to get everybody, landscape architects, to talk to the urbanists and really learn from each other, because an architect, a building doesn't stop at the front door. It also has a street in front, and it has a park, and it has a garden. So everything should be combined. At least that's our thought of it. To get a bit of an idea of how you get an architect in the Netherlands. There are 8 architecture schools where you can study architecture. The 2 yellow ones are the universities, in which the Technical University in Delft is maybe the most well known. And then around it we have 6 academies of architecture. You see that Amsterdam here is the biggest one of the academies, but it's still much smaller than the Technical University in Delft. And we benefit from the fact that it's so small, so we're also very flexible. And we'll talk to this about this later, because we think flexibility within the students, but also in the educational program, is vital. To become an architect, you can go, well, roughly in 2 routes. One route on the left side is the more scientific route, where you go from the secondary school directly to the university, where you have the bachelor and master program. And after that, you have the preliminary title of architect. At the academy, it's the academies, I must say, you start off with a 4-year bachelor studies at an art school or at a more professional school, the technical school, and then you start with 4 years at the academy. And next to that, but I will come back to that later, you also work. Because we have the so-called concurrent system. In the Netherlands, the architecture title is, the title for an architect is protected, which means that after you've done the university, you will need to work at least for 2 years to get to become a licensed architect. In the academy, it's the other way around. Because we work, our students work for 50% next to the academy, you already, after finishing the academy, you can register as an architect, which of course is very tough. But on the other hand, you still know that you're actually ready to get into the architectural society. So this is how our program looks. And you see on the left side, you see what we teach at the academy. And on the right side, you see the practice. And it's not only that it looks similar or it looks the same weight, it actually is. So students who work at the practice, it will be reviewed at the academy, and it has to be relevant. If it's not relevant, you have to leave the academy. So that's a very difficult thing for students to find a relevant place to study. Which means that during daytime, the students are all working at the architectural offices, and at night they have to study at the academy. So you can imagine that it's an extremely tough study to do. Not only the amount of work, but also the way of thinking. It's very tough. During daytime, it's on practice, and at night you have to think about architecture itself. In the Netherlands, we have multiple disciplines. Of course, here you also have architecture and urbanism. In the Netherlands, also landscape architecture is very important, where landscape architecture in other places is called more like a garden architecture. In the Netherlands, we design everything. We design polders, which is one image you see here, but also all kinds of, nearly everything we have in the Netherlands has been designed, the design landscape. This is one of our students, for instance, who was thinking about, in his urbanism, thinking about Amsterdam, how it should look in a few years, because now Amsterdam is getting way too expensive to live in. Now there are only tourists, a lot of hotels, so for well, the normal people it's way too expensive. And around Amsterdam we have a lot of parts which are tough to live in because of social problems, but also of urbanist mistakes. This student, he made an affordable part of Amsterdam. So also we try to really think about contemporary issues and really try to discuss with them how can we face those issues. So for instance, also landscape architecture, we are living in the Netherlands in a delta, which is of course very beautiful but also very hazardous. We're constantly changing our dike system, our pumping system to make sure that everything will be safe. But on the other hand, you don't want to live in a technical structure. You want to live in a beautiful landscape. So our landscape architects, for instance, this student, she thought about how could this delta look like with low tide, high tide, and how can we influence the stream of water during the high tides or with the difficult times, and also how can it look beautiful when it's low tide. So we're designing nearly everything. At least we think about everything. If we have to design or change things we don't know, at least we research it. Another thing, this is another student who will probably win a big award tomorrow in the Netherlands for this research, is a student who thought about the new society. So how do people live in general, but mainly in this case also how does the gaming industry influence the way of living, the way of contacting people who are in the gaming industry. People think that it's people who are gaming are only sitting in their attic just doing their games, but they also want to communicate, and they communicate for her in this house. And of course you can argue a lot about what she thought of, but she went very deep into the matter to see what the new possibilities are instead of what the problems are. And that's one of the things that's important. We never talk about problems, but more about challenges. What can we, challenges and chances. So to talk about our educational system, we have roughly said a few main principles. We have the master programs, the architecture, urbanism, and landscape architecture. We have the small-scale learning environment, the one-on-one education, the interdisciplinarity, the designers, so the teachers, I will tell you something about, the research, internationalization, and the students themselves. We work in very small groups. Well, very small, at least in small groups. It's the groups of 6 to 10 people, which were guided by 1 or 2 tutors. So there's a lot of guidance going on. This makes it possible also to have a lot of discussion during one of the gathering nights. And these groups in the first year, they also work interdisciplinary. So the landscape architects, urbanists, and architects work together on projects to see where their profession will be. And because we have such small groups, it's possible also to have one-on-one education. We think that a student is an individual and is not a part of a group. Of course, you're a part of a group, but it's not nobody's the same. We really use the talent of every student to develop this towards the student, the spatial thinker in the end. And as said, also the interdisciplinarity, where we have big workshops on contemporary issues. For instance, here you see a housing project in Amsterdam where we work with architects, urbanists, and landscape students to see what could be the best solution, or what could be a good solution for this region. And we do this also together with the municipality of Amsterdam. So they also recognize the value of the academy, and the academy students mainly, in having this discussion. And then for designers and by designers. This was the academy when it started, approximately. So these were the teachers. And you probably wonder why not one of the fixed professors is standing here before you, but just one of the guest professors. This has the very simple reason is because we don't have any. Nobody has a fixed contract at the academy. There's only a staff. So our principal, she is the director. She's mainly in charge of the whole household of the academy. Then we have the 3 heads of departments, so landscape architecture, architecture, and urbanism. They have their heads of department, but they only are appointed for 4 years, and they have to leave after 4 years. There will never be an extension. So there's always going to be, how do you call it? New thoughts, new things coming in. It's a very vibrant environment. And then also these 3 heads of architecture, they have guest teachers. The guest teachers always apply for new projects. So for instance, myself, I teach already for 18 years now at the academy, but I always have to apply for every project that I would like to do. If I don't apply, I will never get a project. If the students are critical about me, I will not be asked anymore. So we also, as teachers, have to improve ourselves. Otherwise, we'll never be asked again. There's a lot of architects who want to teach at the academy. So if I fail, there will be 20 others to pick my place. Which results in the end in the fact that we have approximately 280 students at the academy, and we also have 300 teachers walking around. So if you think about one-on-one education, it's actually more than one-on-one. So this is our teachers' population nowadays. It's big and it's very diverse, and that's something we also would like to do, to give all students the possibility to choose their own project, to choose their own teacher, which teacher fits you best, who do you think will guide you the best through the system, through the program, and that's the one you will be working with. To look at a bit of our school system, I made a comparison. So what you see in Delft, you have mainly, roughly said, you have the thematic lines, which are the white dots, and underneath there are the teachers, the blue dots, and from that you have the vertical lines where the students are connected to the thematic lines. If you look at the ATH in Zurich, it's much more of one person standing on top, the master, having some apprentices underneath, and from that students are much more in a pyramid and the other way around. In Amsterdam, actually I should have taken this pyramid and then put it around. That's also how we present it, is that we think it's very important that we have a whole idea about education. So it's not only general but also very specific. We find the right teacher who's in the middle, and students, as in a marketplace, they find their teacher and what they want to learn. And of course, it's all been, you also have to stack up with your competences, but still the student is much more in charge who he or she follows and who she thinks is important for him or her. So for us it's the same thing. Where students, they work during day and teach at night, study at night, we have the same thing. During daytime, I have my architectural office, and at night, I lecture at the academy. So this makes it a very interesting combination. I also have students from the academy working at my office. So there's a very nice connection in between both. Since the mid of the 90s, we also have research, because there was a lot of questions about how do you integrate research, theory, and everything. It used to be only at the university in Delft, and of course that's not enough. You should have more institutes which go into the research. You do have the Berlage Institute, but that's a whole other way of thinking and a way of teaching also. So we have three, so every different line, so architecture, urbanism, and landscape architecture have their own professor which is connected, and have their own study groups in the academy, working together also with our students. And added to that, and that's more of a thing which we do together with the whole Academy of the Applied Arts, Academy of Arts, is that we have guest professors, the artists in residence, who together with our students, very briefly but very specific, go into workshops, lectures, building elements, and they also really have their free hand of working with our students to make, well, to get their mind on a different setting. And I think that's one of the main things that is happening in the artist in residence part. Looking at internationalization, of course it's important to have an international group of students, and not so much because we think as an evangelist make sure that we tell everybody how we think that it should be working at the academy or in the architectural field, but much more also because we think the world is bigger than just the Netherlands, it's bigger than just Europe, it's the entire world we have to learn from. There's a lot of people coming from all over the world to the Netherlands, so we have to think about how can we cope with the issues that they will bring with them. And it's not only problems, it's also chances. So we want to learn from them. And that's why also we try to keep our network as wide as possible, so from all over the world. And of course, the core is still mainly in Europe and the Baltic states, but we are still expanding and expanding. That's also why we changed our whole educational system in 2013 to all an English system, so we can really develop the whole studies internationally. And like I said, we try to work together with all kinds of students, but also all kinds of schools. These two underneath here, this is a group on the left side where I worked with a group in Lithuania, and on the right side, the left side is Serbia, and the right side was a group from Lithuania. And our students actually worked together with the other students, mainly seeing, okay, we have the same issues, but how do we cope with it? How do you think of it? And we learned we learned a lot from them, and also they from us, I hope. And this is one of the projects from Darья, which she's standing over there. Darьya, wave, 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 wave. This is your project. Darьya, she studied in Voronezh, and she came to Amsterdam, and I was fortunate to be her mentor at her final thesis project. And this shows not only that we're trying to educate the students the way we think architecture should be, but also that we want to learn from what the students take with them from the other place. So for instance, here Darьya made a beautiful housing project in Amsterdam, but she kept the values she learned and experienced here in Russia. And it turned out to be a very interesting project, but also it's very highly valued in Amsterdam, because we can still also learn from her. And that's a very nice thing to do, not only teach, but also learn from them. And that's the thing I hope, Darьya, that you've done a lot, and I know. And then I'm ending with the most important thing. That's the students. One of the most important sayings in Amsterdam is that the students are the most important ones. Without students, there would be no academy. So we think it's very important that we develop students in every possible way, help them to develop themselves individually. So we try to fuel the curiosity. You have to be a sponge. If you get in, you feel like a sponge and really grasp, breathe, smell, touch everything and try to interpret it, and how can you work with it as a spatial thinker. And for instance, this guy here on top, there was a project that I did with him about thinking about the future architecture school. What should it be? We're not only thinking about the building itself, but of course it starts with thinking about what should architecture education be in 5, 10, 20 years? And then what kind of school building should be fitted, would fit this? With that, he also looked into the work of Ledoux and Boulez and was looking at what's the sphere? What is a sphere and what can I do with it? So he really went actually into the project and made a very beautiful project out of it in the end, in the middle of a very important square in Lithuania. And also what we do is try to get as much connection to the actual world, to say, to get in the discussion. Like I said, the project that we did, the more urbanist project in Amsterdam for the housing region, we worked with the municipality. Here we had a problem or a question from a lot of farmers, because the farmers are diminishing in rapid style. So the farms were getting empty, and what to do with it? What can we do with this empty space? So there was a large discussion going on, and our students are also asked to provide some fuel, some information. What can we do with it? What could be the concept of this future farming system? With that, our students learn also how clients think, because in general, of course, it's not that when you're little, you're taught that the client is paying you, so you have to do what the client is asking. And of course, you can do that, but the client, in our opinion, never knows exactly what he wants. A client knows that he wants to earn money, he wants to have a place or wants to have a building, but how to get there, that's where they need us. And that's actually what they did here, help us. So we have the money, but of course we have requirements, we have demands, we have to live up to it. But think in a creative way, how can we help you? How can the students help us to spend our money as well as possible and also make a very beautiful environment with it? And that's of course a very nice translation between theory studies, but also the practice that we're working in. And another thing which is very important is that we teach our students to be very critical, always. Never believe the thing that you hear directly. Always think of it as, is it really true what I'm hearing? So also you should be, in the end, when I finish my story, thinking, okay, is he really talking the truth, or is it just a nice weather story? That's actually what we're doing all the time. Students should be critical to everything and everybody they hear. And that's something, of course, for us teachers, very difficult, because you just want to tell something and then it has to be eaten as a cookie. But on the other hand, it's also sharpening our ideas, this criticism. And also it teaches students to be, to ask the right questions. In the current society, it's not about knowing everything. The society is way too complex. It's much more about asking the right question. It's the same thing as Google. Google knows more than you do, but you need to know the actual question to ask. And that's the thing that we're teaching our students. So for instance, on the left side here, there's the famous architect Herman Hertzberger. There was a group from Vilnius coming over, and Herman Hertzberger said, I don't have time and I don't want to give a lecture anymore. I'm 85 years old, so it's okay, but I do want to host them at my office. So I said, okay, then I'll let the students give a critical lecture about your work. And then Herman Hertzberger said, okay, let's do this. So Herman Hertzberger, he saw 5 or 6 of his projects being very critically presented. And then the discussion started, because he had other ideas, of course, and the buildings were old. So there was a very beautiful discussion, and students learned much more from this, because they get a direct response from the architect himself, than just by listening to a lecture and then seeing the images, and then it's okay, we copy it. So now they know much more about the way of thinking of the architect, which is something you can use in developing yourself as an architect. But also, for instance, here, this is my group from last week, where the group, we reviewed everybody, and then we got reviewed by the group. That's the same thing. So we can be very negative about them, but if we are, then we will also be failing their review. So next year we have to find another profession, I think. So also this is an interaction between both. And another thing is also be critical to society, to politics. Position yourself. This is a girl who did her final thesis about the refugees at Lampedusa in Italy, where a lot of people came by, a lot of people died, still die. And she thought of a system, not so much a technical system, but much more of a spatial system, to feel the refugees at least a bit more welcome than right now. And it was a very rough system. It was a very rough project, but still there was a lot of feeling inside, because she really wanted to mean something for these refugees. And I think one of the most important things at the Academy is who you are. Of course, the first question is, what is an architect? Is it actually a very closed-off profession, or how wide is our profession? But it's much more also, who are you as an architect? Because, of course, you have big buildings, small buildings, but also how do you work with society? What do you think that's important to you? Where can you add something to the discussion. We teach our students, well, actually not, we don't teach our students. We don't teach our students architecture. We discuss architecture with them. And of course, we as teachers and professors have more knowledge than they do, but still we discuss the things that we know and we hear with them and try to sharpen their ideas and to make real individual students out of them. So how do we do that? Let's get a sip of water. Of course, we have a curriculum. I don't know if it's the same thing in Russia, but we work in projects during 3 years, which contain for 8 or 16 weeks. And every project has to be presented. So presentation is also one of the main, one of the key issues you have to do at a project, because we think if you have a beautiful project but you're not able to explain it or to tell about it, then nobody will notice. So you will have to be able also to talk the story about the project. We have exercises. This one at the Barcelona pavilion in Barcelona, where students had to map the whole pavilion. Why is this such a beautiful pavilion? Why does everybody like it? Why is it so important? So also always ask the question, why is this? Why? So don't believe it directly. See it for yourself. Find out what's the key element. Trying to look into new materials in exercises. So for instance, on the right side, just rebuild famous buildings. Try to get into not in copying beautiful buildings or beautiful ideas, but much more trying to interpret the ideas of the architect. Why did he make certain decisions? What are the consequences for the people who are living there or working there or walking around or using at least the situation? And what can I learn from it again? Next to that we have form studies, where this is one of the examples where I think there are 12 or 14 different form studies where we look into, for instance, materials. How does it, in this case it was, we started off with what is a brick? The famous question from Louis Kahn. What do you want, if you would ask a brick what it wants to be, it would say an arch. In this case we said, okay, if we make the brick in a different system, in a different shape, what would the brick answer then? Would it still be an arch or would it be something different? So always also getting into the core of the material itself. Next to that we have a series of lectures. We have thematic lectures which are combined with the different themes we're working on, and some general lectures which are also open for everybody to enter. And of course the workshops. We believe in the fact that if students work with materials, work with colors, with space, they really get a feeling of how does a certain decision end up in a certain space. So mostly we start off with making sketches or drawings, and then with a small model, and then build it in one-on-one or one-on-two, and then you get this kind of beautiful environments where students are actually changing a small part of their own educational world. And we do these workshops not only at the academy, but do them internationally. So we work together with schools from, well, not, at least from all over Europe, from Norway to England and Liechtenstein and Barcelona. So we always try to find collaborations with other schools and also see what they can learn from us, but mostly what can we learn from them. And of course, excursions. Going all over the world. Like I said, it's very important, at least that's what we think, to breathe smell, touch everything and use it to your own benefit. So it's a very diverse excursion system that we have, where you can apply and just go wherever you are, and it's in a. You also get credits for it, but I think it's much more important that you get the maximum out of the studies. And what we're working on right now is a lot of exhibitions, so that students not only, and these are inside the academy building, so when you're having a beer or having something to eat, you're always inspired by big architects in general, but more important by projects of your colleagues. So student work is very important to us, so that's why we always expose it at the academy and also tell about it. So also again, learn from each other and not so much from us. Also from us, of course. Which ends up in this scheme. So on the left side with the black stripe on top, that's the part that you do at the academy, and this is the external curriculum. So this is the part what we do at the office. So the things that you do at the office will also be reviewed at the academy. If it's not good enough, you have to do it all over again, or you have to leave the academy, which sounds a bit harsh, but it is. But as you can see, it's quite a cramped scheme. So there's actually very little time for any social gatherings or something. The academy is very cramped, which also means that because of the system and because of the amount of work you have to do, only 30%, about 30% of the students who start at the academy will actually end up being a licensed architect or urbanist or landscape architect. So it's a very tough studies, but you know in the end that if you've made it to the end, you've gotten the maximum out of yourself and really are ready to start in the professional world. And what we try to do in everything is to combine, and it's, of course it also has to do with the concurrent system, so the working at the office and the working at the studying at the studies, is always try to combine craftsmanship with creativity. Creativity is the thing that we have as architects, which of course other people also have it, but they don't use it as much as we do when solving issues in a public area. For instance, like we work with bio-based materials, not just see what the company is providing you, but also trying to find some new materials yourself. Or now we have, and it's not really working yet, but looking what can you do with seaweed. So also trying to find out, is it something we can work with? And if so, what can you do with it in architecture? Can it be more than just a cladding? Can it also be something of a spatial component? Or this one, this is also in the Barcelona pavilion. We were very fortunate to be able to have the pavilion for 4 days to ourselves and just do all kinds of experiments. So here, I hope you recognize it still. This is the bookshop of the Barcelona pavilion, and we research what can light do to space. How can you relight the Barcelona pavilion, and how does it react the space? And also like this, the beautiful wall that's already there, just by putting light to it, it becomes even more important than it already is. So what can light do for architecture? We have our own VR lab, of course, and this is of course quite new, at least at our academy. Still searching very much on how can you use it. So, and we think VR is, at least as it is right now, still a means. It should never be a goal. It's a means to explain architecture, to walk through architecture and to research some spaces, but it will never be a goal. People won't live in VR, at least not for the next 20 years. After that, maybe they are. But so we use the VR lab, okay, or actually as a research laboratory. This in the Erasmus program, so in the international Erasmus program, we started off with crafting the facade and actually building a one-on-one facade and see how does a facade work, what do you need to make an actual facade. It's not just a rendering from a digital program, but it consists of bricks or steel or wood, and how can you influence the feeling of the facade, but also the inside with the materials. And this is, for instance, the wood discussion. And in the end, one of my students recently said, when I asked, I said, how do you feel the academy? And she said, the academy feels like a journey. And of course, a journey is tough. A journey is very nice. You meet a lot of new friends. You see a lot of things. Things go wrong, also at the academy in Amsterdam. But still, in the end, the experience is beautiful. And that's something we want to provide at the academy. And I think, well, because the reason why I'm here is, of course, that Darья invited me. She's one of the students. And I think you are the result of such a beautiful journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Oh, есть вопросы? Да.
You showed us two different, even I think it was three different schemes. You tried to compare the difference. You tried to compare the quality of students and teachers in different academies of architecture in Amsterdam as well. But I didn't find any masters in the Academy of Architecture in Amsterdam.
Well, to be honest, we only have a master degree. So I will go back to the ski. It's nice to have a question about the beginning. We'll get there. Yeah, it's more this master scheme, right? This one.
No, before that, there's a difference.
Yeah.
You tried to compare.
Oh, sorry. The systems, you mean? This one. Yeah. This one. Now, come. Where was it?
Because I didn't find any masters.
No.
Like, turn me up one. The Academy of Architecture.
We don't have masters. Why? We believe in this system. So we invite, so if you have a theme, like for instance, we have a theme in housing, we invite, in our opinion, the best housing professors, architects, which are available, and they will be helping you in the project. We don't believe in the fact there's one person on top who's determining everything. It's much more important that the student gets his or her own position and find the right person to develop it. So that's why we never have these vertical lines. It's much more horizontal. Yeah, is it the answer to your question or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is only Academy of Architecture. It's the all universities.
It's mainly only at our academy. Also, the thing is that because we are master studies, our students are a bit older than normal students. Of course, when you start up with the bachelor studies, you're 16, 17, starting with the studies. But at, for instance, the theater academy, the students are 16, so they also needed different guidance. And we believe much more in the fact that our students are already adults. I think the most of them, when they start, are 25 or something. So they know a bit more about life already, and they know what they need already. So I also ask them to write their own program. Of course, at the academy we have our own program. We ask them to write the program themselves, and together with the students, I'm going to search for the right persons to guide them through the academy. Yeah.
Еще вопросы?
Oh, yes, we have. Well, actually, one of the big the challenges, I must say, at the Academy is that we have an extremely cramped program. Also, during summer and winter holidays, there are always workshops, excursions going on. So I think in the upcoming summer, we have 4 or 5 workshops all over Europe. So also in Amsterdam. So yes, we do organize those. You mean if they're available for outside people, or there are some of them, but most of them are in collaboration with other architecture schools from abroad. But I think the START workshop, which is in September mainly, that's always open for. Do you know that? The START workshop, I think it's open.
No,
for...
it's only for students. No, it's not for everybody.
But you have these 3 or 4 day workshop, which
it's
is
open days.
Open. No, it's a workshop.
Workshop. Yeah, I think
there is one, but mainly you have to be part of another school.
Can I find this information on your website?
Yeah, don't have a website on the presentation. Yes, there is a website, and we can provide it to you.
I will send it to organization, to Andre and Maxime. They will share it with you.
Yeah,
Probably a lot of people are interested in how to take a workshop or something, how to participate in any activities in our school.
Would be great. As said, we are trying to broaden our network, so feel free at least to take a glimpse at our academy. Amsterdam is a nice city to visit, and I think our studies is also very important.
Actually, that's why we are here. You also have to think how to push our university to make a really nice, really working connection with Academy of Architecture in Amsterdam. It has to be initiative. Вы тоже должны брать инициативу, если вы хотите стимулировать наш университет к сотрудничеству. Вы в том числе должны быть активными сторонниками этого. I said they also have to try to push it.
Yeah, that's why I said it's important what you as students want. Of course, I understand it's difficult to be critical, but on the other hand, if you're not critical, you won't develop yourself. So try to from the basis, try to start discussing things, ask questions. Why are things done? What do you need? And what do you think you need yourself to become the spatial thinker you want to be? Because it's not what, in my opinion, and of course in the Netherlands maybe it's a bit different, but in my opinion it's not important what somebody else thinks you should be. It's much more important what you think you should be. And that's one of the main goals that we have at the Academy also.
Да, у вас есть право на свое мнение, вы можете критиковать всю систему, вы можете спрашивать у преподавателей, почему это так, а не по-другому. И если вы действительно считаете, что есть другой путь, что нужны другие предметы, что какие-то предметы лишние в ущерб необходимым, вы должны говорить об этом. Только вы можете решать, что вам нужно.
Any other questions or critiques? No? We in Amsterdam, when we have a lecture, then we always want to have at least 10 questions, because then we know that people will be actually listening and did not just be there because they have to have a cross behind the name when there's a list, but also to make sure that there's always going to be critique.
Давайте 10 вопросов, какие угодно.
What did
10
you say?
questions.
No questions?
No?
Давай. We have a question. Wait a minute. Wait, do it again.
I see many workshops in other countries. Who paid for this?
You do. No, it's actually the Academy pays, but we have an Erasmus program, and that's a European program which is providing money for workshops, but also collaboration with other universities and academies in Europe. So they also provided the financial part. It's not a private school. It's not a really expensive school, I think. It's not expensive as the Berlage Institute, for instance, or the Strelkade, I think.
Marsh, yeah.
Yeah. So everything is paid or by the academy or by the Erasmus, and there are some small things as like excursions that's something additional. But mainly it's inside the program. Yes.
Thank you. What happens to your students after they finish your course? Are they good architects? Can you give us some examples? Где доказательства, что ваши студенты стали хорошими архитекторами?
Yes. One is standing over there. So she graduated 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, something like that. Of course, when you study and when you work at the same time, you always have a very strong connection to the actual architecture profession. So if there are good architects, I'm not going to say, because I think that's something that other people should say. But on the other hand, if you see what's been built in the Netherlands right now, and what's really important, then I think 40 to 50% comes from students who studied either in Amsterdam. Rotterdam is also a good academy. One of those two academies, I think they provide 50% of the famous architects. But that's also something that we are not looking for. We're not trying to raise the star architects because they only build maybe 2% of everything what's been built around you. But we think it's much more important to have really good architects who build the actual street that you're walking on, and not only the theater or the airport. That's small thing. Of course, it's nice to see. It's much more important when you leave the house that you have a nice house, you have a good street to walk in, a nice park to be, and then also a nice working area to be in. So, to be short, I think every student who leaves the academy, because it's very tough, like I said, it's only 30% who will finish the academy in the end who starts. You will have a certain basis where you can say that the student is, yes, you're a good spatial thinker. So, yes, you're a good architect.
Now, can I add something? Yeah, because when you are done with academy, you know so much about society. You know so much about this profession. So you will find your place, your right place anyway.
Then I will also add something. Another thing is that when you finish the academy, but it's with every study, you're never done. You have to keep on learning. Rem Koolhaas was 47, 48 when he built his first small building. Before that, he did research, he read a lot, he studied an enormous amount, and then so you have to keep on learning, and I'm convinced that you will build your best building when you're 55 or 60, because you have to see, you have to hear, to talk, to discuss. So the academies or the university here or anywhere is just the beginning.
But maybe it's also different meaning of word good architect. What means good? I mean, good if you really can mean something for this world. I can translate it like this: if you really can mean something for this society, if you are trying to make it better than it is, then you are a good architect. And even if you do the small things and it's changing the world, you are already a good architect, probably.
Yeah, it's also a definition question. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah. You also have a question.
I'm not sure about my English.
You can do it in Russian and also translate.
I'll try in English. Have you got in your academy scientific researching about, for example, teaching process or maybe creative style of your students or something else?
We do have scientific research, not so much on the educational system, because that's something that we review all the time. Actually, that's some of the things, like I said, it's not only, of course, the images that you see, it's all about the beauty of the academy and all the nice things. They're also going, things are going the wrong way. But the good thing about the academy is that it's a very open society, so discussion is very direct. So there's always reviewing on education, talking to other tutors, talking to the director, and seeing how can we improve that. So it's not actually research, but much more of let's say applied research. On the other parts, we have professors who do work with the students on the research lines. Also there the students have their saying to see what do we think that's important to learn and where do we need an actual professor for, but that's of course taking much longer than just one project. So these are the research lines that are used. Yes. Yeah.
Any more?
Oh, sorry, my English is very poor, so I'll try in Russian.
So is mine, it's no problem.
Даш, вот у нас есть Министерство образования, которое спускает рабочие программы, ну, то есть стандарты, как обучать. И вопрос о том, если или сообщество студентов или преподавателей даже пытается что-то изменить, поменять в лучшую сторону в этот момент. Да и вообще оно часто занято больше бумажной такой работой, оформительской, как отчетами, чем обучением. Вот хотелось бы сравнить. А там насколько свободно в этом вопросе вот этот вот вуз? То есть как он может взаимодействовать? Есть ли там какое-то министерство, вот, которое вот отвечает с властями? Или он самостоятельно что-то может решать? Вот в какой степени?
Again, question about standards in educational standards. So here there are really strong standards, educational standards, and when students or teachers they're trying to fight against it, there is no chance to win, because it's really somebody's just sitting upstairs and decide what's good and what good and what bad. How is it in Holland? If you really can change the standards, if you can prove it's if you can prove that you know better.
I think the answer is quite difficult, because for me it's easy to say that we can change easily in the Netherlands. I think it's much more easy than here. To be factual on the first part, we don't have the standard rules that we have to apply to, but we have competences in the end. So I, as a teacher, I have in the end a competence what I should have, and then I'm free to design my whole assignment around it, which gives me a lot of freedom, but also not only when writing an assignment, but also with executing the assignment. So when I see that my students are when I don't help them with my program, I can adjust it all the time, because I'm quite free as a teacher. So I always work together with my students. So yes, it is possible to adjust things, or at least take them very flexible or fluidly. I don't know how it is here, how it works here, but what we do see, we have, I think, 5 or 6 students we had from this region coming to Amsterdam, and it would be very nice for them to go back, at least for workshops and those kind of things, so they can influence the system by opening up. Of course, it's the power of repetition. Having a workshop, having another workshop, doing another lecture, doing something else, and then slowly things will change. It won't change from today to until tomorrow, but I believe in the fact that if you really want to, keep inviting people like Daria, who knows the both ways, and she can help you. And Alexei is also one of the students. He will also come here, I think, to do some workshopping or something. Use it. Actually, in Delft, the system is much more firm because it's also a much bigger school. We started with another program. It was 15 years ago, where we put some containers on the street, and we started another educational program. We thought it was more important. And at first, of course, the dean of the school was not very happy with us. He said, "You don't get any money." We said, "Okay." Then we do it ourselves. So at first we started off with 2 or 3 students in a container and just did a project. It was a beautiful project. But it costed us and the student a lot of money because they didn't get any credits for it. But the student was very enthusiastic. So it started going on like a virus, telling everybody. So the project after, there were 2 containers. We had, I think, 10 students. So 1 year later, there were 2. We only had place for 2 containers, and we had an application system going on because there were 200 students wanting to come into these containers. So change, and of course, then it was recognized by the dean that it was something important, and then they invited us in, and they said, "Okay, let's talk about this because apparently it's important." So it took us also a year, and I think in the Netherlands it's much easier than here, but still. With repeating those things and showing what's possible, there should be a possibility to change things. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of frustration. But in the end, the reward is enormous. I would challenge you.
Do you like Voronezh?
The part that I've seen, I do, but can you guide me around? Because I arrived yesterday evening at 1 o'clock, so I've only seen this morning for 200 meters. So if you can show me something, I would really like it. Now, if to make it a bit of a more serious question, I didn't know what to expect here at the school. I thought it would be very formal, very closed off. But I like the atmosphere at this conference very much. I think there's people smiling. It's people are looking towards the future, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. Also, if you look at the exhibition outside, there's a wide variety of all kinds of things. People are looking for new things, but also very traditional things which are being built. But you have the feeling that something's happening, and I think that I like very much. So it's a very vibrant environment. Yes. So in that case, yes. Any more?
Yeah.
How do you see an ideal applicant to your master course?
Do you mean how do you do it?
How do you see the perfect applicant to do your master course? The perfect candidate for your master course, your perfect student, let's say.
No. The perfect student is a sponge. So when we start off, there's a lot of students applying for a position at the academy. Some students have beautiful portfolios, really very professional. But they already know, they're quite arrogant, they know what they are, and I need to know this and this. So they're quite closed off, like a shell. When you have a student who says, "Okay, I want to learn this and I want to learn that, and I'm really open to absorb anything that I want to have," that's much more interesting, because then this journey is much more rewarding in the end. So for us as an academy, it's much more rewarding to work with a student like that than just somebody who already thinks that he or she knows what to do. So open up to the world around you. Make sure that all your pores are open, so you can get any smell or feeling inside. That's the main thing. And then we will help you. If you're open, then we'll help you. If you're
Can I add something? It's not interesting if you are perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be yourself.
Well,
This is very interesting.
there is no perfect student.
No, there is no perfect people at all.
No.
We are, yeah, nobody's perfect.
No.
Except you.
Yeah. No, but the perfect, the best student is a student who is willing to learn. I think that's the short version. Any other? Sorry. Wait.
What is the cost of the studying program?
It's about 9,000 for foreign people. Около 9,000 евро в год для иностранцев.
But, of course, it's a lot of money. But on the other hand, you will be working for at least 20 hours a week. So you also will be earning money. So you have to work. You have to work at least 20 hours a week. And to be honest, for Dutch companies, sometimes it's difficult to hire people who don't speak the language. But especially in Amsterdam, most of the offices are very internationally directed, so then it's possible to work at the office. And then your average wage is already, I think, something like 1,500 euros in the minimum for each month. So, sorry? For starters, yes. Yeah. So that's also to put it a bit in perspective, because 9,000 euros, I understand it still is a huge amount of money, but in difference to a university, you do earn something without working in a bar. Yeah, it's also subsidized, but you can never count on that. So it would be nice, but you cannot count on it. Any more? Who dares? We're at 9 questions now, so.
Are there any scholarships for foreign students? Are there any scholarships available for foreign students?
As far as sorry? No, I don't think so. There is it's subsidized partly, but I don't think we have scholarships themselves. They should be in the University of Arts, but not so much at the academy itself. So I think scholarships are only possible when you're a full-time student, and yeah, like I said, at our academy, it's important. You're only allowed to study if you also work. That's a part of the program. So then I think the study is paid by that.
I don't have experience with that. I don't know.
No, I think so. Anything else?
Thank you.
So I think I really want to thank you for listening to my story. I think it's. I hope I have inspired you at least a bit. If there's any questions, I'll be walking around for a few hours probably. So just come up to me and then I will talk to you. I think it's something great which is happening here. So make use of it. Yes.
Thank you, Bart.
Thank you.